Welcome into the Late Night Baseball Show. It's October 17, 2024, the year of our Lord, Shohei Ohtani, and I am rolling solo today. I'm your host, Anthony, usually joined by Parker, but Parker has something to get done with the kiddos tonight, so he will be back next week. But thanks for stopping in so we can talk a little bit of baseball tonight. We won't have a full show tonight, but baseball doesn't sleep, so neither do we. Today, we are going to be diving into news around baseball like we usually do in our First to Home segment. We are going to do a little postseason check-in, and then I have some things to get off my chest because we had some big news out of Chicago this week, and the White Sox are looking to sell, apparently. So I'll have a lot to say about that. But like we usually do each and every week, let's go First to Home and talk about some of the biggest stories in baseball this week. Stopping off at first base, the Rays are saying that Tropicana Field won't be ready by opening day 2025, which is just insane. For those of you who've been following around, Tropicana Field's roof was completely torn off as a result of Hurricane Milton. And right now, the Rays are figuring out what is going to be happening with this team and where they'll be playing in 2025 and beyond. What makes the Trop just really an interesting ballpark in general, is because they had a roof. That field does not have a draining system, right? So you really can't play there without a roof, and with all the rain that Florida gets between now and opening day, it's really hard to manage. And I guess reports out of Tampa are that, do they have insurance on the roof? Yes, of course they do, through the city, but apparently it takes 9 figures and more to repair that roof. And for any of you that have been following the Rays situation, they have been pining for a new ballpark there in St. Petersburg, Tampa Bay for a while now, and it looks like it's something that is a part of their future, but really not until 2028, 2029. So there's still quite a ways to go before they get this new ballpark. So the Rays are really considering what's next. Do they play in a minor league ballpark in 2025? Do they share a ballpark with another team? Do they go up to Montreal? Who knows? But what we do know is that the Rays will not be playing in the Trop in 2025 and may very well not be playing there for the next 3 years, which is kind of crazy. We move on to second base, and we do hear that MLB sets the 2025 qualifying offer to $21 million, precisely a shade over $21 million. So for those of you who may not understand what the qualifying offer is, it is something that applies to the MLB offseason, and any team that has a free agent who is going into free agency in this offseason, they have the ability to offer the qualifying offer to these players, which equates to a 1-year deal, and in this case, $21 million for the 1 year. Now, what happens is the player can accept that 1-year deal. They'll be with the team in 2025 and be making a really nice $21 million. Now, what happens if the player doesn't accept that is the player can decline that offer, go into free agency, but then when that player signs with another team, that team that they came from, the team that made the offer, receives a compensatory pick in the next MLB draft for 2025. Now, this qualifying offer thing, it's a little controversial, right? I mean, if you put yourself in the shoes of the team, there's kind of give and take here, right? Like if you offer a guy $21 million for 1 year, if they accept it, you're on the hook paying a guy $21 million. I mean, that's not chump change. On the other end of it, it provides teams some security of having a player who's of high quality, kind of an all-star caliber, maybe even an MVP level player who is walking away, is probably not going to be able to re-sign them, but at least you get a draft pick out of it. So that really is kind of the view from the side of the team, really. Now, if you're a player, honestly, I mean, if you want the $21 million for a year, I suppose that's great, right? You take that. But where it becomes an issue is some of these players that are offered these qualifying offers may not be your annual all-star types or your MVP types. And so what happens is if they get offered that and they choose not to take it, they kind of have this draft pick hanging over them. And some teams may do a cost-benefit analysis and say, hey, we want to sign this player. We like him. but we don't really like him enough to give up a draft pick for him. So in a lot of ways, it could kind of screw over the player, right? Because the player has maybe less offers in free agency because they have the loss of a draft pick tied to them. So this is something the league and the Players Association has gone back and forth with for a long time. No doubt it will come up in the next collective bargaining agreement, which I believe is up in 2026, if you could believe that. Tale as old as time. That just keeps coming back, and obviously, they go at it for a year. But it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens with the qualifying offer in the next few years. Every year it goes up, and we'll see what players get tagged with that qualifying offer here in a few short weeks. We're rolling up to third base, and we have news out of Philadelphia. The Phillies are extending their manager, Rob Thompson's contract through 2026. Phillies obviously, much to their chagrin, left the playoffs early this year. This was a team, if you've been listening to our show, Parker and I have been very excited about the Phillies. Parker picked them to win the whole damn thing, and rightfully so, right? This is a team that has made multiple NLCS appearances the last few years. They have all the recipes to win the World Series, but they just couldn't get it done this year, being kicked out of the playoffs by their rival, the New York Mets. So, they're definitely feeling the burn there in Philly land, but Rob Thompson has proved to be really a force as far as a manager goes. I mean, you go back and think about what Rob Thompson took over. I mean, he was hired partway through the 2022 season after replacing Joe Girardi. He was the best bench coach for Joe Girardi. And then since then, I mean, he's led the team to an over 500 record. 250 wins, 185 losses, 2 wildcard berths, an NL East Division title, 1 NL pennant. And even in the playoffs, I mean, the Phillies have gone 20-14 in the playoffs just under his leadership. So, I mean, the guy's a really solid catch for Philadelphia, and looks like they're going to want him to stay around even after a disappointing end to this season through 2026. And lastly, we're going to slide into home and talk about perhaps the biggest story in baseball over the last couple of days, and it is close to home for me. The White Sox owner, Jerry Reinsdorf, is open to selling the team and is in active discussions with Dave Stewart. We will talk about that more here momentarily because, as you can imagine, I have a lot to say and have very strong feelings about it. But before we do that, I wanted to check in on some of the things that are going on here in the postseason. Right now, we have a live game, actually, as recording here, October 17th. We're in the evening. We have the Yankees and Guardians playing in Game 3 of the ALCS, and here we are in the top of the 7th. Cleveland is up 3-1, which they absolutely need to win this game. They are down in that series 2-0. Also tonight, we have the Dodgers, who have flown to New York to play the Mets in Game 4 of the National League Championship Series, and the Dodgers are leading that series 2-1, so pretty close there. And the goal here, folks, is we are going to be following the postseason for the next couple of weeks here. When we return, Parker and I, next week, we should see the wrap-up of the League Championship Series. So what we'll be doing is kind of giving a good peek at the championship series, and then we will be doing a preview of the World Series. So make sure you tune in next week to join us in talking about the craziness that will absolutely be the 2024 Fall Classic. Now, I want to transition to talking about the White Sox, and we'll spend the rest of the time talking about this. This is pretty significant, right? I mean, anytime you have a team that is going to sell their franchise, it's big news, and I would be remiss if I didn't spend time talking about it, because the White Sox are in a pretty interesting situation right now, right? They came off 121 losses in 2024, the modern day record for losses in a season. And mind you, this is after they went through a rebuild. And starting in 2029, not even there yet, 2019, 2020, 2021, you started to see that this rebuild maybe was paying off, but they just really couldn't land it. Players got injured, players didn't perform to their potential, and the rebuild quickly fizzled away and ultimately failed. And this has led to 2 back-to-back 100-plus loss seasons, and now we hear via Britt Grioli from The Athletic that Jerry Reinsdorf is open to selling this team. And in fact, not only is he open to it, I think the biggest news of this is that he's in active discussions about selling it, specifically with Dave Stewart, or a group, I should say, specifically led by Dave Stewart. Now, why is this significant? Well, if you've been following baseball closely over the last couple of years, you know that there's been a lot of talk about expansion teams. Rob Manfred in the past has gone as far as saying that the MLB will expand. It is a matter of when and not if. Dave Stewart has been a big part of those efforts. Dave Stewart, for those of you who don't know, kind of a big guy in baseball. I mean, this is a guy who's well known in the sport. He played for some of the most successful A's teams in the 70s. He has experience as a coach, as an executive, as an agent, and was even a general manager for the Diamondbacks at one point. So he is baseball through and through and has been around the game a long time, a well-known guy in the baseball world. But what makes him unique is that in recent years, he has been involved with a group that's been trying to get an MLB franchise in Nashville. He's been part of a group called Music City Baseball, and they've been just hell-bent on putting resources and marketing and an effort towards getting baseball in Nashville. Now, recently, Dave Stewart has stepped aside from Music City Baseball. I believe that was last November, and has started his own group called Smoke 34. Smoke 34 is his jersey number. Smoke is his nickname. So there you go. Smoke 34 is his new group. And from all indications, it seems that Dave Stewart has shifted from getting a team to Nashville to, hey, I just want to own a team, right? I mean, he was involved in trying to buy the Marlins at one point. Of course, he's involved in these expansion efforts with Nashville and the Music City Baseball. I mean, this is a guy who wants to own a Major League Baseball team, which would actually be kind of neat in one way because he would be the first minority majority owner in Major League Baseball if that were to become true. And it looks like he is talking to Jerry about the White Sox. Now, I had some crazy first reactions with this. You know, my first reaction was just thank God, right? Like as a White Sox fan, I could talk all day about how Jerry Reinsdorf has just done the team wrong from a leadership standpoint, from a money management standpoint, having way too much loyalty towards people who didn't belong in the front office of that franchise. We could talk about that all day. And my first reaction was, yeah, that's great. Get Jerry out, give it to someone new. Let's rebuild this White Sox team, give it the funds, the support, the vision that every White Sox fan deserves. But then I really started thinking about, and this by no means negate how I feel about Jerry, but then I started thinking about what is the plan if someone like Dave Stewart buys the White Sox? Would Dave Stewart keep the White Sox in Chicago? Or would Dave Stewart want to move this team? Now, I'll go so far as saying that it's not likely Dave Stewart moves the White Sox. I mean, let's just be honest here, right? Like, is it a possibility? Maybe. I can't say I'm overly worried about it. I mean, think about it. If you're a baseball owner, right, and you have a population of 9 million in Chicago, okay, and let's obviously the Cubs are what? Chicago's team, as they say, right? So let's just assume the Cubs get 60% of that share of the fan base, and that's being, generous. So 30% you have, 3 million of a fan base that you're working with. And then you have the population of Nashville. Let me make sure I look at this, make sure I'm right here. The population of Nashville is estimated to be not even 1 million, right? It's actually 687,000. So, you put on some of the surrounding area there and, let's call it 1 million, 1.5 million. I would rather, as a business owner, be in a market that has 3 million people and maybe even more than a market of 1.5 million on a good day, okay? So I think there's some value from a business standpoint of keeping the White Sox in Chicago. So I'm not overly concerned about them moving, but it's not fair to say that it's impossible that they would move. So that's where we're at right now with the White Sox. Between Jerry wanting to build a new stadium in Chicago that he can't get public funding for obvious reasons, couldn't agree more. You're a billionaire, pay your own damn stadium. Why are you coming to people who already are dealing with all these costs and all these taxes? Why are you going to come over here asking them for money? The time for that's done. People don't have an appetite for that. Build your own goddamn stadium. I think that's what's going to happen with Jerry or whoever owns this team, is they're going to have to come up with private funds, private equity to do that. But that now combined with active discussions, we could be very well looking at the end of the road for Jerry Reinsdorf's ownership of the Chicago White Sox. And I could not be more excited. We'll see. We'll see how it all falls. But at the end of the day, I like to keep this in perspective so I don't get too excited. But, maybe he's just putting this out there so that it's leverage, right? So he does get a stadium. Who knows? I don't think it's going to work. But at the end of the day, you've had the Lerners say that they're selling the Nationals, right? You've had Artie Moreno flirt with selling the Angels. Shoot, you had the Polids last week. We talked about them wanting to sell the Twins with all these conditions. So owners say this stuff from time to time, and we know sometimes it's all just talk and exploring and seeing how much their franchise is really worth in the market, and ultimately don't sell. I would hate for that to be the case, but you never really know with these type of dudes. So that's the story we're going to be following going forward. I wanted to make sure I kind of hit on that and talked about that a little more because it is a big deal and it's certainly personal to me. One thing I'll leave you with, and this is something I'm thinking about, right? And I've thought about this all day today, just very distracted by this news. But I want to kind of bring this back to you. If your team relocated, no matter what team you are a fan of, if they relocated, would you still be a fan of that team? Honestly, would you? Because that's where I'm at right now. I'm trying to figure out, in this future state, if the White Sox left Chicago, would I be a White Sox fan? And it's an answer I'm having a really hard time coming up with. Because part of me does. Part of me thinks I'll follow them wherever they go. But I keep coming back to the fact that I'm a Chicagoland area guy. I grew up here. The area is very important to me. I want my team to be here in my backyard, and I can see them whenever I want. And then I think, is that really necessary? What if I picked a team, say the White Sox move? Do I pick a team that is connected to a city that I really care about? I really love Philadelphia, for example. Do I become a Phillies fan? I really love Washington, D.C. It's one of my favorite places on earth. Do I become a Nationals fan? I don't know. And it's certainly premature for me to be thinking about stuff like that, but it is definitely been in my thoughts today as I try to dissect the news of the White Sox. So we'll dive into that more probably in the next couple of weeks as we get more information. But next week, we're going to have a really good show for you when Parker returns. We're going to be wrapping up, as I said, the League Championship series, talking about all the great action going on there. And then we are going to do a World Series preview. In addition, at some point, maybe next week, maybe the week after, but hang on to your seats because we're going to be talking about the manager openings around baseball. You have both the White Sox and the Marlins who have manager openings. So at some point, we're going to be talking about our top manager candidates in general and who these teams should go after to fill their bench boss role. So that'll do it today here for the Late Night Baseball Show. Thanks for just stopping in with me here for about 20 minutes as we talk just a little bit of baseball. Don't forget, please leave us a review. If you're listening to us every week, we greatly appreciate it. We like to have fun here. Here at the Late Night Baseball Show, we carried over from Utini. We had a lot of fun doing that. Here at the Late Night Baseball Show, we're doing the same sort of vibe. No topics off limits. We like talking baseball. We like having a great time. We get a little crazy around here. That's the goal, and wouldn't be happier than to do it with my friend Parker. So make sure you're listening to us every week, tuning in, following us on Instagram, on Twitter or X, however you like to call that, and make sure you're leaving a review, please, a good review. We really appreciate it. Spread the word about what we're doing here at the Late Night Baseball Show. Thanks for dropping in. Talk to you next week. Take care.